All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting and hearing for Thursday, July 18th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. I now call this meeting to order. First item is determination of a quorum. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 commissioners present, so we do indeed have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of this evening's agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt?
I move that we adopt.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Visitor communication. This is the time provided for individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding issues not already on this evening's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience tonight that would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda tonight? Okay. Next item is approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from April 4th, 2024 and April 18th, 2024, Exhibit A and Exhibit B?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And,
I held out there. I didn't vote on that. I wasn't there. I wasn't a member.
okay, no problem. It still passes. So moving along, we'll go ahead and jump right into the public hearing tonight. And I will go through my spiel. This is the time set for a public hearing on city file number MOD 24-01, an application for a modification of condition of approval number 25 for the Sunset Meadows Master Plan to allow recording of the plat for phases 3 or 4 of the subdivision upon issuance of building permits for all multifamily buildings instead of obtaining certificates of occupancy for the multifamily residential development as currently required by the condition. The application was submitted by Todd Woodley of WH Sisters LLC. This meeting is now called to order. Conduct of hearing. Public hearing will be conducted as follows. A, staff presentation. B, entry of additional correspondence received into the record. C, applicant opportunity to make a presentation. D, opening the public hearing for testimony in the following order. 1, testimony in support of the proposal. 2, testimony in opposition of the proposal. And 3, neutral testimony. E, applicant opportunity for rebuttal. F, questions of staff, if any, by the Planning Commission. G, closed public testimony portion of hearing. And H, discussion and decision by the Planning Commission. Testimony. Testimony will be accepted in person and remotely via Zoom. If you would like to speak, please provide your testimony after you are called. If you do not wish to provide testimony, please say no testimony after you are called. Any questions should be directed to me as the chair. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record. Please speak clearly and loudly to ensure testimony is heard, as this hearing is being recorded. Callers will be muted after their testimony concludes. At my discretion, I may limit testimony to 3 minutes per person. I would encourage those wishing to speak to keep testimony concise and relevant to the issue before us this evening. It is encouraged to simply agree with a point made by another person instead of remaking the point. For the deliberations tonight, the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. These are the criteria the Planning Commission must use in making its decision. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or other land use regulations that the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Testimony that is not directed towards applicable or potentially applicable approval criteria, even if a strong point, is ultimately not relevant. Failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford the Planning Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the Planning Commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Disclosures. At this time, I ask the members of the Planning Commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, conflicts of interest. When your name is called, please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. Commissioner T. Walt,
Yeah.
do you have any ex parte contacts, bias?
I am working with the applicant on the other phase, on the first phase of this. I don't know really. I feel like I think I can do this without having any issues.
Okay, so you intend to,
I intend to vote.
okay. And Commissioner Blumenkron,
I have no ex parte contact and no conflict of interest, and I intend to participate.
great. Commissioner Reese,
I have a bias and I will not participate.
thank you. Commissioner Retzman,
I've had no contacts and I have no biases or conflicts, and I plan to participate.
thank you. And Chairman Seymour, other than driving by the project in question, I have no other ex parte contact, biases, or conflicts, and I intend to participate. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the ability of any commissioner to hear this matter? Okay. Thanks, Tom.
We still have a quorum?
Yes, we still have a quorum. We'll go ahead and proceed with the staff report.
Chair Seymour, Commissioners, good evening. I'm Matthew Martin, Principal Planner, Sisters Community Development Department. As introduced by the chair, what we have before you is a modification of a prior master plan approval of what's identified as Sunset Meadows, and a modification of a specific condition of approval related to the timing of the recording of phases 3 and 4 of the subdivision portion of the project. My intent of my presentation is to provide supplementary comments in support of the staff report that was presented to you prior to tonight's meeting. Want to acknowledge and emphasize that this project modification is a discrete aspect of the project and not in any way reconfiguring the subdivision or the multifamily development or any of those prior approvals for where dwelling units would be located, and those prior approvals. We're focused on that one condition of approval that was identified in the staff report and summarized in the opening remarks. So first, general overview of the project area. Located in the southwest portion of town along Highway 242 and bound by West Hood Avenue to the east and Brooks Camp Drive to the west. What's identified on the drawing here is existing conditions in general today, meaning the multifamily residential development is located on the larger parcel to the east. That was created by a partition that was part of the master plan approval. Phases 1 and 2 have been platted, and so those lots and related infrastructure are identified on the drawing. And then in green to the west are phases 3 and 4 of the subdivision. I'll note the diagram that was provided in the staff report. The shapes for the phases 3 and 4 were a little offset and more centered on or oriented to Brooks Camp Drive. This drawing more accurately identifies the location of those phases. Noting that in phase 1 were 10 townhomes, phase 2, 15 detached single-family dwellings. Phase 3 includes 14 townhomes, and phase 4 is 21 detached single-family dwellings. Clarifying that townhomes are attached single-family dwellings. They have a shared wall. This product is 2 units attached in succession along a common wall. And then the multifamily residential development was approved for 84 units and a community building. A little bit of history on the project. The master plan for the entirety of the development was approved in early 2023. Following that, in October of 23, the site plan review for the multifamily residential development was approved. Then the partition plat that created the multifamily residential lot along with the larger subdivision parcel prior to creating the subdivision lots themselves was recorded in early 2024. And then phases 1 and 2 were recorded in March of 24. And since that time, the multifamily residential building permits have began submittal, review, and issuance. The first building permit, it was issued in April of 2024. Also noting, not necessarily relevant to this particular proceeding and proposal, but building permitting for the subdivision lots within phases 1 and 2 has been ongoing. We have 4 building permits issued for dwellings and approximately 20 total that have been submitted and in process of being reviewed. In particular to the multifamily residential development, acknowledging that there are 4 buildings that are currently have been issued and currently under construction. These images on the slide were taken yesterday of all 4 buildings that are in development, just identifying the various stages of construction that they are in and the commitment that's been made to the development of those structures. Also noting 2 other buildings permits are in process for the 2 remaining residential structures of the development. Actually received word this afternoon that one of those remaining pending building permits is ready for city sign off. So ready to on the cusp of being issued and construction commencing. And then another note, just as I walked into here, I got message that the building permit for the community building, the clubhouse, has been submitted to Deschutes County. So that's become its review process. So what's before you tonight is directed at one discrete condition of approval, that being that prior to the recording of, a genesis of the condition that's under consideration was intent and interest by the Planning Commission in your decision to initiate the multifamily residential development prior to the originally proposed final phase of this master plan. So that those necessary or needed housing units were not deferred potentially indefinitely to the end of the project horizon, but rather a commitment to those dwelling units earlier in the project. And so what was included in that was that the multifamily was initiated no later than phase 3, meaning between subdivision phases 1 and 2 and subdivision phases 3 and 4. So right in the middle that began completing that project. The trigger point, if you will, of the condition was that certificate of occupancy shall be obtained for all of the residential dwelling units prior to recording the subdivision plat for phases 3 or 4. The applicants proposed that be modified and that phases 3 and 4 can be platted upon issuance of all building permits for the multifamily residential buildings. So it's an effort to initiate that earlier in the process, noting that issuance of building permit can be some months, if not year plus, prior to certificate of occupancy and move-in ready aspect of the buildings. Did want to note, as I indicated in the staff report, it wasn't clear to staff that what the term in the condition, all building permits for multifamily buildings shall be issued. The confusion or lack of clarity is because the multifamily development includes residential buildings as well as the community building. So staff has asked for clarification from the applicant. Is that intended to mean only the residential buildings, or is it intended to include the residential buildings and the community building as it relates to issuance of those building permits prior to platting of the subdivision lots? Of the review criteria that are identified in the staff report, I've summarized what I've identified as the most prominent aspects of the review, and that be under the major modification criteria, that a change of circumstance makes it desirable to make the change to the proposal as approved. And as in summary, and perhaps the applicant can expand on this, the desire to make this modification is that the project has moved along more swiftly than originally anticipated, and in particular that the multifamily development has been initiated and moved more quickly than originally anticipated with the project. And so any construction timeline or anticipated potential delays were not considered at the time of the condition being established. And so here's an opportunity to reevaluate the overall construction timeline as it relates to the commitment to the multifamily. Third criteria of the major modification is that it's directed at one or more discrete aspects of the proposal, this being the condition number 25, the phasing of the development relative to the multifamily development. And then lastly, the under primary plat approval period for multi-phase subdivisions. This criteria provides the opportunity discretion to establish the phasing of a subdivision, both the construction timeline and, as interpreted, the sequencing of the phases. And that discretion, the Planning Commission took advantage of to move the multifamily residential development portion of the project up in the overall construction timeline to that time period between platting of phases 1 and 2 of the subdivision and before phases 3 and 4 of the subdivision. So based on my evaluation of the criteria and the substance of the application, staff recommends approval of the modification as proposed and incorporating the changes into the conditions of approval for the overall master plan. This would be the only change to the project. All other outstanding conditions of approval would remain applicable to the project. So at the conclusion of the testimony, the Planning Commission has a variety of options moving forward. That being continuing the hearing to a date certain, closing the hearing and leaving the written record open to a date certain, closing the hearing and setting a separate date for deliberations, or doing all tonight, closing the public hearing and deliberating to a decision. And with that, I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Pat, what,
Hang on, Art.
okay.
1 second. We gotta go by the. So before we jump into questions, I have to ask about correspondence. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than the items that were included in the agenda materials?
No additional correspondence, and that includes no public comments at all in the record.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and proceed to questions. Art?
I'm just looking at the buildings. It looks like they're at least 60% complete. Is that your estimation from?
So I've contemplated this aspect of it and where the aspect of various inspections that are necessary to move forward. But it's my opinion that they are in various stages, but several of the buildings are in substantial completion, meaning that that at least 2 or 3 have roof structures and roofing, and 2 of them are in process of siding being installed. So I would put those at plus 60%, whereas as you saw in the image, 1 is just at framing and internal sheeting aspects of the building. So I recognize that as a commitment to those buildings being constructed.
Yeah, it's a substantial financial commitment so far.
I agree with that statement.
Questions?
Uh,
Daryl, do you have questions?
Not yet, no.
Okay, I've got a question, actually probably a few. Matt, can you share with the commission the city's position on whether, when you have a certificate of occupancy, in order to receive your certificate of occupancy, the project has to be complete? Is that correct? It has to be ready to be moved into.
Yes, so for a particular building to receive certificate of occupancy, it needs to be move-in ready.
Okay. And a building permit, when a building permit is issued, the recipient intends on building something, but is not required to if they opt to decide not to. Is that correct?
Correct. So upon issuance that there's no commitment to move forward, there's an obligation to have that building permit remain active by receiving periodic inspections on a prescribed timeline. Upon issuance of a building permit, an applicant has paid all building permit review fees, system development charges. So there, I just want to acknowledge that there's a financial commitment to the
Sure.
building up at the point of issuance.
Sure. Um, sorry, I've lost my train of thought a little bit. So we've got 4 of the multifamily residential that are underway. We have 2 that permits have been applied for and have been issued. Is that correct?
The 2 outstanding, so 4 have been issued and under construction
Okay.
in various stages of construction and inspection that were identified in the images. There are 2 still pending that have not been issued. But that's been a process of that plan review timeline and details of the application submittal. But want to acknowledge again that received note that one of those outstanding permits is ready for Sister's final review before it is issued.
Okay.
So making progress was the point of that comment.
And then so in grand total, there's going to be 7 buildings, 6 that are multifamily residential, and then the community building.
That's correct.
So if we opt to accept this tonight, there's the potential that there could be disruption with respect. I'm not saying that there would be, but there's a possibility of disruption with respect to how the multifamily gets completed. Sorry, I'm kind of just thinking out loud here, so I don't know if there's a real question there or,
There's a fact that with any building permit, that there's no obligation to complete that construction. One can walk away from issuance of a building permit. One can walk away from a partially completed building. But I do want to, through the process to date, the progress that's been made on the multifamily, and the timeline of construction, it's clear to staff that there's a commitment at this time to carry the project forward.
okay. And my final question is, when I was reviewing the packet, the statement by the applicant as to the reasoning behind this request was, in my opinion, somewhat vague. And I'd like to hear your interpretation of what that request was and the reasoning for the request. I'm going to also ask the applicant specifically this as well, but I'd like to understand the city's interpretation of it.
I think there was 2 aspects to it. One, a recognition in the statement that the intent of the condition as desired by the Planning Commission has been satisfied. That being that the intent of the condition was to initiate and establish the multifamily earlier in the master plan project horizon, meaning kind of right in the middle, no later than that. And in fact, the multifamily began its process before even the first single family dwellings were under construction. But the other aspect is that that quick start of the multifamily was not as anticipated as early as originally considered at the time of the master plan being considered. So I think the change of circumstances that project has moved forward more quickly than anticipated, as well as the construction and opportunities to move forward with the subdivision and its completion more rapidly. So I think it's about timing and moving the project to completion more quickly than originally anticipated.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
I kind of understood that it was, it would, speed things up on the last couple phases and not cause a delay in the overall project and not cause a lot of disruption to the surrounding neighborhood.
Yeah, and then so that's a rephrasing or a different phrasing of my last comment, that it would this gives an opportunity for the project to move forward more quickly as its entirety. Because if we're waiting on certificate of occupancy for the multifamily, that would delay that platting of the phases 3 and 4 and prolong overall construction. And both the multifamily and the subdivision development are progressing more rapidly and in an opportunity to get completed more quickly.
Answered my question there. I mean, I didn't even consider
Can you guys speak into the microphone?
I didn't even consider the system development charges as cause I was, the financial burden is great. And then if you add that into it, which I didn't think about earlier today, I think that creates a pretty big financial burden to have to back out of at some point. I don't think that most people would do that. So that kind of answers my question a little bit.
Any other questions?
A point of clarification, I guess. So the reason this was first put into place by us before I was here
Yeah.
was to ensure that the multifamily units were built prior to all the residential or single family homes were made. If we approve this, there's 2 apartments or multifamily units. The ground has been excavated. One has some forms for the footings, but that really, we don't have to continue the construction of those and the clubhouse while we're working on the other part. Is that right? Originally, all that had to be completed, the clubhouse and all the apartment units prior to phases 3 and 4 being initiated, correct?
Multifamily needed to achieve certificate of occupancy for all residential buildings prior to the recording of the plat for phases 3 and 4.
Okay. I think that's it for questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Applicant presentation. Applicant will now have the opportunity to provide a presentation.
Thank you. George, can you, click that button and we'll be able to hear you. All right, you're good.
Better?
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. And Matt, would you close your presentation? Thank you.
Yeah, George Hale, 193 Iron Mountain, Lake Oswego, Oregon. I'm here on behalf of Todd Woodley and the WH Sisters LLC. Let me just give you a little background. My company, Woodhill Homes, worked with the city for maybe 9 months, getting the master development kind of negotiated and the city's needs met with what they wanted to see to where it came to its current form. Then what we did was we sold the apartment land to our a partner that we deal with, and that's Todd Woodley and Cobalt Construction. So that's the relationship between the two of us. Okay. And I also wanted to acknowledge the need for apartments in Sisters. I have a friend who's on the board at Black Butte Ranch, and all he talks about is the need for housing, the need for housing, the need for housing. And so, Rick, you brought up a good question about, why did we do this? Why did we condition this? And historically, what had happened was that builders would get land approved with an apartment component. And the problem was that rents really weren't high enough to justify the risk and the return that you would get of building apartments. And so that apartment land would just sit there, right? Which is, I think, kind of where we came to with this condition, to ensure that the apartments got built. And I know that plenty of you have driven by there and you've seen it, right? I mean, those guys are going like great guns. So the request today is simply that, just to change the conditions so that we can speed up our timeline. You know, Jeff, you asked a question of, you know, why do we want to do it? Well, there's a combination of things. One, it's the intents being met to build the apartments. Two, we're really experiencing better sales than we thought. And then when we look at an overall project, the faster a project goes, kind of the better it is for everybody. Neighbors, residents and sisters, you know, it just kind of really shrinks the timeline, the construction. People are disrupted by construction. You know, driving through there right now, you know, you've got flaggers. You can't go down this road. You got to sit there and wait for 5 minutes. I mean, it's you know, it's a problem. So that's really kind of where we're at with the request. What else did I want to say? And this request, I just wanted to note, isn't without, you know, it actually has been requested before. I think Hayden Homes requested a very similar request back in 2021 at, where was that? Mackenzie Meadows Village. So this request really isn't without precedent. But that concludes my comments.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Pretty straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward.
All right. So I've got questions for you.
Like that evil.
Actually, I do have one question.
Go ahead, Rick.
From your earlier statement, when you first were talking about the project, Woodward Homes,
Wood Hill Homes.
Wood Hill Homes.
Yeah.
Has really nothing to do with apartments. They've sold that land to the developer that's doing the apartments. Is that what I heard?
Correct.
So whether you get approval to build, whatever we do tonight really doesn't affect the building of the apartments, you know, as far as you guys, you know, your timing and stuff, except for you guys get to build your homes a little bit sooner and get your part done.
Correct.
So why did you guys initiate the multifamily right out of the chute?
Well, they bought the land, and when you buy the land, you just want to turn that asset into some kind of income producing property as fast as possible.
So you guys sold the land, different entity is now doing the project, and as a result of the agreement that we had with you guys with your master plan, it's going to hold you guys up.
Correct.
Just want to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. I don't think that I've got any more questions for the applicant. Do you guys have any more questions for the applicant?
I don't.
Okay.
I do not.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Public testimony. We will now invite members of the audience to provide testimony. When your name is called, please come forward and state your name and address for the record before proceeding with your testimony. For those attending via Zoom, we will conduct a roll call to see who wants to provide testimony at the conclusion of testimony by those attending in person.
Okay, I will start with roll call. I only see one name on the attendees list. Eric Strobel, would you like to speak and provide testimony tonight? Oops. And I didn't mean to do that. Okay, well, I'm not hearing any input. Okay, call it good.
Okay, and seeing as we don't have anybody in the audience, let's pretty much it for the public testimony portion of our hearing tonight. So we do not need to do any sort of applicant rebuttal. Any additional questions? I am going to change this up a little bit. Any additional questions for staff? Nope. Okay.
No.
And any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. If there are no further questions, I will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. The public testimony portion of the hearing is now closed. Deliberations. We have now closed the hearing and must deliberate towards a decision on the application. As always, our options are to, 1, approve the application as submitted. 2, approve the application subject to conditions of approval as amended. Or number 3, deny the application. Let's go ahead and, before we start individually talking, let's go ahead and have some conversation and a discussion.
I just want to be, it just, the way I understand it, and maybe I should have asked this earlier, but they have to, the Cobalt Construction or the other, that group has to buy all the permits and pay all the SDCs before they can move forward on this other part. Not tomorrow. Is that correct?
So
They think they have to have all those permits in their hand for all the buildings, for all the multifamily.
that's what's being proposed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So and they haven't done that yet.
Correct.
Is those
Okay.
permits, those are also including the clubhouse, from what I
Yeah,
understand?
there's 7 buildings like you mentioned. I think that 4 of them are
Or are
We're under
under
construction and 2 are at the front door and there's one other one that's,
final that's not yet.
Yeah.
been-
And the SDCs are not small, they're.
yeah, that's
substantial.
as soon as I
Substantially
clicked in
expanded.
my head, I went, oh man, they're paying a lot of money.
This is based on the
Yeah.
size of your water line. and
Yeah.
all the other
And
stuff.
if you had to go back through that review again and have us get another whack at you, I mean, it would be a lot more expensive the next time I bet.
And I think since they sold it to an apartment developer, they have a real incentive to build the thing, and they paid for the land and are investing in the infrastructure and have already started on 4 of the buildings. I'm not so worried about big delays. Cause it's changed, the ballgame's changed, it's not the same.
Sure.
deal.
Sure.
I can't speak to how they manage apartments or anything, but they certainly appears to know how to build apartment buildings rapidly. They looks pretty professional.
So one thing I'd like to just remind the commission, because Art and I were on the commission at the time when this was proposed to us, when the master plan came through. And the applicant, had the multifamily component in phase 5. And the idea was to wait until the end to do it. And this, if you guys remember, community was not thrilled about this application.
Nope.
And, our job was to make sure that everything looked good with respect to the development code, and it did. But one way we were able to appease the community and I think probably get some housing done faster than what it would have been was, as a commission, we required the condition of having it done in phase 3.
Which I
And
think
it was not the applicant that proposed that, and I want to make sure that we get that on the.
Yeah.
Which I think we've done. I mean, I see it as
Well, like I said, they started that before they started phase 1,
yeah. Well, because they sold the land and the guy has an incentive once you buy the land to finish. And, we're also weather dependent here. So you have construction up to a certain time, depending on which winter you're going to have. So you want to be under the gun.
How are you guys feeling? Are we in a position to make a motion?
I don't see a problem with it. I'd motion to go ahead.
Yeah, I tend to agree with staff. I mean, this really doesn't affect the intent of what our previous approval was, even though I wasn't here at that time, listening to the intent, this still falls underneath that. The apartments are well under construction. There's a lot of money already invested there. I don't see any problem. Well, and they've already cleared the land for the phase 3 and 4. They're in there yesterday and today clearing the land. So I mean, they're ready too, so.
All right, does somebody,
So did you move that we accepted that?
so if somebody wants to suggest a motion, you can suggest a motion that says something along the lines of, I move to approve city file subject to the conditions of approval as presented by staff. If there's something that's different than what you, want to do, if you want to add conditions, then that's something that we can discuss. So that my first take here is that there's not additional conditions that any commissioner would like to add.
I'd make the motion that we.
May I interject
File number?
before motion?
You guys,
Just a point of clarification. Noting that the condition, that if it's to be accepted as written, that the condition requires all building permits for multifamily buildings shall be issued prior to recordation of the final plats for proposed phases 3 and 4. Again, that clarification of what multifamily buildings mean. In your discussion, your interpretation was that included the buildings with dwelling units as well as the clubhouse.
Yes.
And if that's the intent of the planning commission, then we can have that clarification, based on the motion.
I think so.
Okay. Before a motion is made, I'd like to just state my position. I understand why the applicant is asking for this. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I certainly understand it. However, I am, leery of it because there is the potential, small as it might be, for this stuff not to get done. And I'm the type of person that when you make a deal, you make a deal and you stick to it. And I understand that there are extenuating circumstances in this case, but it's the developer's doing that has created that. It's not been the market, it's not been the city, it's not been anybody else. So while I certainly see where they're coming from and can appreciate that, I'm inclined to vote no on this one. So.
I'll say that, one of the very first things I ever voted when I was on the planning commission in the early mid-2000s, I got burned on this exact same issue by someone, and it came to, like, it worked eventually, but it took a long time. So that weighed heavily on me.
But how far along were they? Did they actually have buildings up, partially up? or-
They built a lot of residential houses before they found somebody to buy that property. 'Cause-
No, but I
yeah.
mean, with the apartments, this is a little different because they already have apartments. on
Exactly.
the
There was
back.
dirt and there was no buyers for the
Okay.
ground and they had no intentions of ever, and well, I shouldn't say I shouldn't say that,
Right.
but it appeared as though. So I thought about that a lot today. I mean, and like, well, not just today. So I get what you're saying.
I would like to address what you said, Chair Sizemore, that, it takes the pressure off them to make sure the apartments are occupiable before they build rest of the houses. But since they sold that land, it really doesn't apply any pressure to Woodland Homes. It only applies pressure to the people building the apartments. So because they're separate entities now.
It doesn't apply any pressure to the people building the apartments.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It doesn't, but
We've lost all leverage.
right.
The only leverage is that they're gonna want income for their
Sure.
investment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Right.
financially invested. That's
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
incentive. I
Right.
get it.
I mean, that would be a huge loss to go this far along and not complete.
Yeah.
Well, nothing's saying that they won't complete the other two until they rent, fully occupy the first 2 buildings or 3 buildings before they start construction on the other buildings too. I mean, they have the excavation done and they got some forms up for footings, but they don't have to necessarily start that
Ever.
ever, yes. And, you know, there's a good chance that they might want to wait till they have some income flow from those first couple of buildings before they start construction. It depends on where they're at with their finances. I mean, how are they thinking of it? We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, the way it's structured currently, Wood Hill has the incentive to make sure that those apartments get done. Even though they may not have any direct influence over it
Yeah,
because
they
they
may not.
sold it,
But they still
but
have,
their, but
Yeah.
their
yeah.
incentive is to make sure that those apartments get done.
Could
And
we find some happy medium possibly and say that, you know, with the condition that they're under roof, you know, so that the outside's buttoned up and, you know, it's got windows is under roof, kind of like the first couple apartments are before we go on. So it's kind of, they have so much invested that they can't not finish. Just, you know, it might be an idea.
I'm not sure that we're in a
I don't know. That's kind of
technical,
hard.
a technical
Yeah.
position to.
Where do you draw the line in the plans? You know, it's kind
I
of,
think we kind of need to stick with what's been
Yeah.
proposed and,
Yeah.
if there's some slight
I mean, you could get
conditions that we
creative.
want to add with respect to approval, then, you know, I think we can talk about that, but,
I don't know, I still think, you know, from my experience, if you're this far along,
sure.
you're not going to quit. And especially since it's a separate entity and their whole purpose in this is to build the apartments. They don't really care how fast the homes get built or not, or what phase. You know, they're in it to make money off building the apartments. So their incentive would be to finish those.
Sure.
I mean, you make a substantial investment in the land, I would assume, and then buying the permits and doing all the infrastructure underground. Yeah.
Well, we can still, do you guys, Art, I mean, you were at a point,
Yeah.
let's make.
I just wanted to make my,
Yeah,
my
no,
position clear.
Yeah, we don't all have to agree
No,
all the
of
time.
course
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
If you want to make a motion, then I would suggest that we make a motion.
Okay, I would make a motion on, mod 24-01 that we accept as proposed.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's three. All those not in favor? Nay, that's one. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Well, that was fun.
Okay, that concludes the hearing. Moving along, staff and commissioner comments.
Scott, would you turn on your mic too? Thank you.
So a couple things, just wanted to pass on a training opportunity for the planning commission. You may have seen it in an email that came from Carrie Prosser. It's an ethics and conflict of interest training. It's next Thursday at 3 to 4:30. And takes place down at the Deschutes County Services Building in Bend. So if you're interested, let me know. I think she had a link there that you could just go ahead and sign up. Could be valuable training for you if you're interested. Staff would probably go and attend that. I know Carrie and I think the city recorder, Rebecca, are going to attend that. You know, we've had training in the past and we've learned a lot, but I find that I always learn something new when I go to these things. And it's always helpful. I think for staff, it's that we have a conflict that night because that's the night of the second steering committee meeting that afternoon. So I'm not sure that we would have time to get down there and attend that. But if you're interested, go ahead and avail yourself of that or let me know. So exciting stuff, right? Yeah.
Only gone through the training 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and we do that training too. We obviously bring city attorney in to do training for the planning commission directly. We try to do that once a year anyway. So you guys have gotten a lot of that recently. But never hurts to do more if you have the time. Just to give you a little bit of update on UGB stuff. Like I've said, the second meeting of the steering committee, it will take place next Thursday at 4 o'clock. Commissioner Blumenkron and Commissioner Retzman are the representatives for the Planning Commission at that meeting. The first meeting back in June, we reviewed the draft land needs report, which is the report that kind of identifies how much land we think we really need, how many acres, and how much of what kind of land we would need. Breaking down residential, employment lands, park lands, public facilities, school land needs. And so that was the first step, and we met with the steering committee and reviewed that with them. And then the next step is to basically establish a study area. You've all seen the maps that have the half mile around the existing boundary, which is kind of the starting point. And then you can also go a mile out if you have certain types of lands within a mile that are contiguous. So this next step kind of takes that map and kind of really starts to hone in on where are the areas that we really want to look at first. If you'll recall that there's a priority of lands that we look at first for inclusion, and the first one are exception lands, and those are basically lands that have experienced some kind of residential or commercial development or can't be considered forest or farmland anymore. And a lot of that's like our rural residential zoned land. Kind of a lot of it's to the northeast here.
And the RR10.
What's that?
RR10.
Yeah, Crossroads and Tollgate are included as exception lands. And then it kind of starts to talk about what of those study area lands can we remove from consideration. You obviously are going to remove the Forest Service lands because we don't own that property, and it's not under consideration at this point for development, if ever. And then steep slopes, floodplains, wetlands, we start to look at kind of constraints on those lands that would not be areas that we could look at for development. So that's what we're going to review with the steering committee next week. What we'll do kind of throughout this process is once it goes to steering committee, it'll go to planning commission. You guys will get the full presentation on that as well. That's scheduled for August 1st. So because you guys haven't had a presentation on the land needs report, we're going to combine both the land needs report and the study area boundary into the same meeting, and that's going to be the August 1st meeting. And then it'll go to council right after that, August 15th. And so that's kind of the order sequence of events. We also have been talking a lot about community engagement and we've got the project website. We've done some articles in the newspaper. There's been some outreach in that manner, but the next step is to really start to do what we did with the comprehensive plan, which is host these things we're calling community conversations, where we're, instead of asking people to come to us to gather information, the best strategy we found is to go to where people are already meeting and already organized and grouped. So getting on, the Sisters Trail Alliance, try to get on one of their meeting agendas and go present kind of what the project is. It's an educational opportunity, kind of let them know what's going on, let them know how they can stay involved or get involved if they want to. We met with like the Quilt Festival, the Folk Festival, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, just as many different types of service clubs or organizations that we can think of. What's that?
School parents meeting.
Parents, yeah. We've let, when we went through the comprehensive plan, we met with a couple of the high school and the middle school leadership classes, which was a really interesting exercise to hear what the kids are, what their opinions are, as it is their future. So we're also going to try to involve the steering committee in that process to kind of increase our reach and make sure that we get out there in the community as much as we can. We're also talking about trying to get on out into the study area, not just looking at city organizations, but, and clubs, but contacting HOAs out in the study area to let them know what's going on, because it does affect areas that they are concerned with. We also will be starting some tabling opportunities out in the community. We're scheduled to have a tabling at the farmer's market on the 28th. So you'll see us out there, and then we'll, obviously this is a process that will be ongoing for, a year to a year and a half from, from today. So we'll be spacing out these opportunities for public input along the way as we get new information and we have opportunities where we want feedback from folks on. So anything I missed, Matt or Emmy, on community engagement or process? No. Anything else you guys wanted to, I think we were going to ask you guys some opinions on the snacks and food that we've been providing to make sure that we're adequately serving you in that need. I don't know if you had a chance. I think some of you guys have responded to that, to Carol, like, workshops, you just want light snacks, and hearings that you want a little bit more, something more substantial.
Yeah, those are sandwich are great.
Thank you for the input. It's helpful.
Whatever you provide, Carol, is
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
We kind of gauge it on the length of the length of the meeting, in terms of how long you guys might be here. We kind of,
This is a quick one.
yeah, we'll take those sandwiches back. It's not long enough. No, yeah, just continue to let us know, and make sure that we're keeping you fed during these things, so you can make good, honest and good decisions. You have something you want to offer?
Oh, I was just going to add a process update on the text amendments to the Sun Ranch Tourist Commercial District remain in review. We went to the city council last Wednesday for public hearing. Received quite a bit of testimony that night, went kind of late. So we got to a point where we closed the oral portion of the public hearing, left the written record open until July 31st, and we'll be back August 14th for.
What was that, tourist commercial
Correct. Yep.
parcel? Okay,
District.
district.
It's our very small district involving three lots.
ERV.
And back on August 14th with anticipated deliberations and decision.
Yep. And just looking at out to the 15th of August would be our next meeting. I think, Jeff, you're out that meeting. I have a note. Are you still out?
I am delivering a kid to college.
Good call. So we have tentatively a proposal to bring a tree fine, consideration of an increase of removal, tree fine for illegal removal of trees back to through the Planning Commission. It's a development code amendment, so we'll start out with a work session on that with you guys. It's gone through the UFB board as well and have to go to council. Kind of in response to one of the trees that was taken out of Woodlands without approval. There's direction from the council that our existing fines of $500 were not really sufficient to as a penalty for the size of the tree that was removed. It may not be a disincentive to doing that in the future. So consideration of that will run through you guys, through the Planning Commission. So,
So you, the chainsaw.
Yeah, no, he just used a big piece of heavy equipment. Yank it out.
I didn't.
Then we'll give you an update on building hardening. We've had some adjustments and thoughts on the building hardening potential code amendment. Well, number one, we realized it wouldn't be a development code amendment, so it wouldn't involve Planning Commission. And then there's some reconsideration of whether we as a city can go forward with more stringent requirements than what the state is requiring associated with the new fire maps that they're issuing, the wildfire maps.
Wouldn't it be the county
Maybe out.
anyway that does the actual building codes?
The county,
It would be Deschutes County, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but there's a section, I think we would adopt it locally if we were to do it in our municipal code. They would be the ones that would administer it.
Didn't Ashland, they're a municipality and they have an updated or more stringent code than the state, do they not? They
I-
specify the types of plants you can put in and.
And that's a different aspect of wildfire mitigation measures. So we have the building hardening, which is the actual structure itself and what materials are used for it to be resilient. Then the second step is defensible space and different aspects of maintaining those areas around structures, use of plant material, and other aspects of that. So building hardening is one aspect that would be through the municipal code.
And that's.
We're in a position to come back for defensible space standards that would be adopted as part of the development code. So, and I'm glad you're aware of Ashland. They're kind of one of the
Leaders.
leaders is a good way.
They've been slapped around a bit, so.
And so we've already looked into their program and plan on consulting them throughout and consider what they've adopted. So yeah, that's forthcoming.
There's
later in the
approximately
fall.
500,000 acres on fire within Oregon right now.
How many?
About 500,000 acres.
Yeah.
Wow.
In Oregon alone.
So not a minute too soon on some of these amendments for sisters. And then in addition, so we'll give you an update on kind of where we're going with the building hardening at that August 15th. You know, what the direction of the city is at that point, based on discussions we'll have with council, and we'll have more information at that time. Just kind of for planning commission is really kind of an update, since you guys wouldn't be involved either way, since it's not a development code amendment. But since we have kind of engaged you already, we want to make sure we close the loop with you on that. And keep you updated. And then we thought we'd give you an update on, I think we're gonna bring we got an historic preservation grant through the state that was passed through the county we got about $10,000, I think, or 5,000.
5,000.
5,000, okay. That we use that to hire a consultant to help us come up with some building standards for downtown buildings that might enable them to become more hardened, harden the buildings for fire resiliency, but yet at the same time kind of respecting their historic context as well. And so
The Western design theme, and so there's kind of a constraint with the building hardening standards, what kind of materials are recommended in that context, and they kind of conflict with what the Western design theme recommends for building materials. So it's reviewing that intersection there to try to ensure that there's enough options for architectural variety within the Western themed districts.
So Emmy's been working with the consultant and the county and to formulate that. So she'll make a presentation on that at the 15th for you guys. It's kind of an update. Anything else you guys have staff wise? No? Okay. That's it for staff comments.
Commissioners, any comments, questions?
Nope. Comment, I'm proud of our staff. You know, the more I work with you guys, the more proud I am to be able to work with you guys.
Indeed. We're
Thank
very
you.
lucky.
Yeah.
We've got a great staff.
We are.
Okay. With that, we'll adjourn. Thanks, everyone.